Now, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, welcome to our humble establishment, and we welcome you both in behalf of the Theosophical Society in America, which owns this building, and of our Gnostic Church, which holds its services and other activities here as well. And so you are extended a double welcome, which in turn we hope is welcomed by you. In any event, we are following a tradition of many decades with this meeting this evening, because it was in the 1970s that we held our first annual prognostication by way of the tarot meeting, and we had one every year since then. Now, it has been our custom for some time, which, however, I think we shall allow to go into abeyance this evening, of giving a sort of little introductory spiel about the nature of the tarot, about its history and so forth. But it came to my mind, and hopefully in an illuminating fashion, that if you didn't know about the tarot, you wouldn't be here tonight. So why in the heck repeat the information which in some fashion you have already received before, and engage in that kind of duplication? Therefore, we shall not do that. Let me just say that much, that the tarot is a mysterious occult instrumentality. Not even the very word, the very name, has ever had an adequate translation given. All sorts of weird conjectures having been made, and in fact the tarot has a tendency to create some weird circumstances. One of the magical authorities of the turn of the century and the early 20th century, who I shall not name at this point, then you already guessed who I'm talking about, had said that there are entities connected with the tarot. Us occult people see entities everywhere, even when anti-entity is on the screen. But that there are entities that they are tricksters. They are a little bit mischievous. Of course, he should have known, because that man was quite a trickster himself, a very important individual nevertheless. So that being the case, we need to keep in mind that as all tricksters, the tarot is a mystery. And as I say, the very word itself has never had an unquestioned translation, and that is probably apparently what the tarot entity is like. Actually, the fame of the tarot and its rise to considerable public knowledge and acclaim did not come until the 19th century, maybe already a little bit toward the end of the 18th century, when the great French giant of occult lore, Eliphas Levi, Alphonse Louis Constant by his civilian name, had published very fine information about the correlation and the relationship of the Kabbalistic tree of life and the paths or channels connecting the Sephiroth on the Tree of Life. And this gave the tarot a tremendous shot in the arm, as it were, and books and various tarot decks have been published in considerable numbers since then, and that interest in various ways, as we can tell by your kind presence here, have endured to the present time. Some of the translations or attempted translations of matters relating to the tarot really have taken peculiar turns. I will only mention one, because fortunately, having lived for about a year in the fair land of Belgium, and for other reasons, I know some French. And then I saw a book here in English, although no doubt translated, by the truly great and prestigious turn-of-the-century French occult teacher Papus, and it is entitled, at least in the English heading, The Tarot of the Bohemians. And I thought to myself, the Bohemians are the people who live in Bohemia or Czech country. And then it came to me, the French name for gypsy is Bohemien. And that is why a translator is such an important person, It obviously a silly mistranslation occurred, and that Bohemien was interpreted as a wrongful translation of gypsy. Now, it is true, and I come from I was born and raised in a country which is noted for its large gypsy population, namely Hungary, that the gypsy people, of whom I saw many ever since my childhood in the countryside, that the gypsy population was, among other arts and crafts, also devoted to the divination, or as its vulgar name has it, fortune-telling by way of cards, and that these cards were more often than not tarot cards. So the likelihood is, and I'll conclude I said I'm not going to do this, and I'm doing it, then you can see how that goes. But in any event, the likelihood is that the tarot cards, in some form, because various ancient decks have been discovered, that the tarot cards in some form were, to say the least, the ancestors of all the playing cards that are being used today, including the ones that are used for bridge or for whist or for various things. In Austria, particularly, there is a popular deck which has almost the same name, and I have one of them, which is called the Tarock, T-R-O-C-K, and it's a more direct derivative of the original tarot cards than others. In any event, from somewhere, from the great mystery of history, this deck of cards has come and survived, and among various uses that it has been put, certainly there was also and without that it probably would not have survived, the practice of what we call divination. Divination, the debased form of which, or the debased name of which, is fortune-telling, is the use of some instrumentality for the invoking of insight and information not ordinarily available, but in some secret and mysterious way accessible beyond our daily lives, in the realms of occult and mysterious and psychic happenings. So that is really, I think, an adequate general idea. Certainly, at various times in history, probably the most important of these being in the 1960s, there were regular upwellings of interest of considerable size and import in the tarot, and then great many tarot decks have been printed, in addition to the few that were available, and certainly not, as one would expect, not all of them of equal value and equal interest, but still of some significance. And just like, I don't know, in the Middle Ages or in the time of the Renaissance, to this day, probably the most frequent use of the tarot is for divinatory purposes, which is the attempt on our part to bring into our mundane consciousness matters which otherwise are veiled from our sight, and which for the most part pertain to the future. This is what I'm now going to say, is something that I think I repeated every time when talking about the tarot, in whatever context, that while some of you are too young to remember, but of course, is anyone as old as I do remember, that we had a Hollywood prophet at one time. And the Hollywood prophet, I'll conceal his name at this time because maybe some of you remembered, but I'll give up the concealment. His name was Criswell. He probably had a first name, but nobody knew it. And Criswell had a very popular television program and was really quite an interesting man. One of his sayings, which became sort of popular after he had voiced it, I think, on television, was that we are all interested in the future, because that is where you and I are going to spend the rest of our lives. And then came Criswell predicts. In any event, certainly not only Criswell, but many people in all walks of life had an interest in the future, because it is one of those dimensions of reality that is ordinarily concealed from us, and therefore if we gain some insight into it, we feel that we have been thereby enriched. Now, that being the case, there are, of course, many ways in which the deck of tarot cards, which consists of 78 cards, pretty big deck, that the deck of tarot cards have been utilized. And that one of the main ways of thus employing the tarot cards for the purpose of divination, or in a more lowly form, fortune telling, is that certain ways of laying out the cards after the cards being shuffled and so forth are taken to give an indication of future developments, usually of a person. Generally, you have an individual going to a tarot reader and asking for a reading, and at that time the tarot reader will spread out, usually on some flat surface, what technically in tarot circles is called a spread, because the cards are spread out according to a certain pattern. and the different portions of that pattern are taken to be indications of some aspect that is developing or has developed in the person's life, or in the life of the person who has come for a tarot reading. So now when we are doing a much more general reading, because these readings at early in January that we have conducted for such a long time have been for the purpose of attempting to gain some insight into the various situations and developments in the United States of America. And I picked up that idea from my greatly revered teacher and employer of many years, Manly Palmer Hall, who always at this time of the year had several astrological readings at the Philosophical Research Society. One of them was the horoscope of the nation. And then there were the individual horoscopes of people, which always amused us, because initially, when he started that, I was there at the first session, when he started that, he gave all the 12 signs of the zodiac in one lecture. Well, needless to say, it was somewhat concentrated and confusing, and so thereafter he just had like maybe 2 signs one evening, 2 signs another evening. And those were really amusing incidents, because let's say he just spoke about Capricorn and then was going on down the zodiac, and a whole bunch of people got up and left. The reason being those were all Capricorns. When he came around to my sign, Sagittarius, I was polite, because I had great regard for Mr. Hall, and I still do, and I of course did not leave. But that's how you could tell who was of which astrological sign. Well, with the tarot it is somewhat different, but he also, the very first lecture that he gave on that cycle, in that cycle of subject, was the horoscope of the nation. So therefore, we have also designed a reading for the United States, and that is the one at which you are graciously present and assisting at the present time. Now, do keep in mind that like all divinatory devices, the tarot impels and illuminates, but does not compel or force either the future itself or our understanding of the future. In other words, even though it doesn't look that way, you and I have to do a good deal of work in our psyche in order to gain some understanding of what the tarot is trying to tell us. If we are not involved, then we are not going to get much of a result. So you have to keep that in mind. Keep your divinatory sense sharp and cutting, and then perhaps you will gain some significant insights. Now the tarot spread, the particular way of laying out the cards that we use for this occasion, is something that is called the Celtic cross. And in order to begin the reading, what we need to do first of all is to select a card, and the principle of random selections is extremely important here. We need to select a card which in this case will stand for the United States of America. When you're reading for an individual, then it is just for the it is the individual's card. The way on an occasion like this that we select that the cards have been shuffled a number of times before I came here, but that we try to employ the principle of chance, and therefore we cut the cards and then we reassemble them in a new way, and we have decided many years ago that the card that will symbolize, in this case the United States, symbolize our customer for whom we are reading, is done after cards having been shuffled, cards having been cut, and the first queen, because there are 4 queens in the tarot deck, and the first queen that comes up in the bottom of the deck will be what is technically has been called the significator, meaning the card that stands for the person, or in this case, the nation that asks the question. So here we are at the bottom of the deck, and I am looking for a queen, and in this world where there are so few monarchs left, the queen is even difficult to find in the tarot deck. But we shall find her, and we know that the great queen whom we all, so many of us admired so greatly, has gone to her noble ancestors, but that the British monarchy endures. And so do I think the spiritual monarchies. Oh yeah, Her Majesty is hiding quite a bit. Usually by this time we got her. But she will be there, she'll be there. Here it is. The Queen of Wands will be our significator, which means the card that stands as the symbolic representative of the nation, of the United States themselves, and here she is. Now, the significator, the main issue being that it stands as the representative of the person, or in this case, of the nation that we are reading for. And so it is, we might say it is an overall theme of consciousness, of mind, of physical and spiritual characteristics that we may ascribe to the United States of America, and which would be involved in whatever happens to the United States. So we have the significator as the Queen of Wands. And why did we pick that? Well, it seemed like a good idea at the time, which was many, many years ago, and essentially also some of us, most of these persons, having gone to the eternal hunting grounds over the decades, my friends who were together with us at that time, we all had the feeling that there's something feminine about the archetype and the archetypal psyche of the United States. Oh no, I know that the Uncle Sam has been represented as this comical character with a kind of a curious short beard, you know, but also a top hat and various other things. So in the masculine form, but somehow from a somewhat deeper perspective, that was our conviction. I think it was. And of course, what has been really the spiritual symbol of the nation for so long, the Statue of Liberty, the goddess of freedom. You know, no one who has not come into New York Harbor, as many of your ancestors have, and very few of us have, I still have, has come into New York Harbor on a vessel, on a boat, in the fog, and then looked at the Statue of Liberty emerging, holding up her torch, and has experienced the feelings that are attendant upon that, can quite understand, I think, as to what a gigantic spiritual symbol that Statue of the Liberty is, and how the presence, how there is a presence behind it. And without that presence, which was invoked by erecting the statue here, I think much blessing has come upon the United States. So now we got to see as to what in the traditional nomenclature in divination is called the covering card, which which is one of the major activations, I would say, of the tarot reading of consciousness. Because this we may wish to keep in mind, although once again it would take much too much explanation to come close to it, that it is no matter who we are reading for, and of course all the tarot readers on Hollywood Boulevard and elsewhere are reading for somebody else because that is how they make their money. But when we are reading for someone else, ostensibly, nevertheless, the reader is or should be intensely involved in the reading, and so should the person whom we are reading for. So they both must sort of extend the parameters of their own psyche to touch each other and to create the kind of interaction which might be the originator of helpful disclosures in the developments of the person, and in this case of the entire nation. So what we do now is we'll keep picking up cards from the deck. The next card, which will be which we refer to as the covering cards, is the Nine of Cups. Now the Nine of Cups is a card of satiation, of having had too much. There is this corpulent fellow sitting there with a sort of a counter behind him with all the, whatever you want to imagine them to be, cocktail glasses, wine glasses, brandy glasses, that would be my choice, behind him, and feeling very satisfied and very full. Now, is that how our nation feels collectively? No. So does that mean that the tarot has lied to us? No. What has happened is that we need to look a little bit on the less easily apparent side of the meaning of the card. We are satiated not in a happy fashion, but in a sense I think that many of us in this culture, and for fairly good reason, sort of had enough. We are experiencing a life that is too much. We are having input of information, particularly which is related to divination, that is too much. So in a sense we might say that our life in this country, at least at this particular time, is sort of too much. And so the idea of being this satiated person can mean someone not who is really happy about having all of these goods, but who is in a condition wherein he's had enough, more than enough. And so there is an underlying thirst. I use the word thirst because in the card we are dealing with cups. We are thirsting for something in this country that we don't know how to define. And that is a grave psychological predicament. Even the very fact that we are using the term thirst and that the card indicates cups is of great importance, because we can, as we know just from physiological data, we can live for quite a long time without food, or with very little food. But we cannot live without drink. We cannot live. Now, I don't mean necessarily alcoholic drink, although I must say it helps. It does help. You're not going to find a teetotaler in this Hungarian, but so there is a phenomenon of having come to the end of the road in terms of our experiences. We are bored with life because we had experienced life to a great extent and degree, and perhaps what we have experienced wasn't very helpful. So we are suffering from too much experience, from too much technology, from too much science, and of almost anything that comes our way is too much. I mean, look, for instance, just a few years ago, and that was one of the times when the Tarot didn't want to tell us anything important, was when COVID was coming. And what happened then? We always have, human race always has sicknesses, and all of us have had the flu, this, that, or the other thing. But when that sickness becomes a devastating epidemic, which has very significant psychological as well as physical effects, then we might say that we had a little too much. The little too much virus. Like in that old church song that it's a song in school whereby religious matters have been sort of burlesqued. Let us worship great Osiris. He will help us in a crisis, and he'll write us a papyrus to save us from the virus. So let's say this. In fact, I added one of Isis's things to it. So let's say we've had the very coming of a devastating epidemic is also an indication of too much. There's something too much in too many things in the consciousness, too many things in the activities, too many things in the media, of course, especially there, that we are exposed to, and therefore that is our covering card. So we shall see how the other cards as they come along may perhaps mitigate, help us in that regard, and help us to maybe work our way through this plethora of experiences, plethora of images and ideas and imaginations that we are subjected to in our culture. So the covering card being that of the Nine of Cups. Underneath the covering card, usually placed in a horizontal position, is what has been called the crossing card. And it has been indicated that this stands, perhaps because of its position and the way it is placed on the general conditions, in this case, of the country, it may indicate an other dimension of consciousness, an alternative way of exercising our minds than the covering card. So in the covering card, we are satiated. We have had too much. We have had too much riches. We have had too much publicity, too much this, too much that, and perhaps too many of the wrong things. And therefore, we are filled up to here. At least I am. And after all, I can regard myself as a paragon in that regard. So in any event, from the covering card, but the crossing card may indicate forces of consciousness which cross over that, which may bring in something else, and which are of a different nature than the feeling of fullness, of satiety, and of boredom, which is in this case in the significator and in the collective psyche of the country. So now let us say what that crossing card may be. Oh dear. Well, in any event, the crossing, I'll tell you, the crossing card is the Eight of Cups. Now the Eight of Cups depicts, as you can probably see, a person who is walking away. I mean, it's almost as if this is a continuation of the covering card. I very seldom have encountered something like that. So you might say, here he is, sitting with all the cups behind him and probably drinking most of them, and now he got up and left the cups behind and is walking away. Now, of course, that's mythologizing about it, because we have no indication that it is the same person, but certainly it is the indication that there is another force of consciousness that wants to turn its back on the plenty, on the overload of so many things that we experience in this culture, and that is willing to turn its back and to walk away from it. Now this can be taken in several ways. You can walk away of something because you're disgusted with it. You may walk away from it because you feel that by taking a walk, you might encounter something to enrich your life and to add to these resources that you turned your back on. So it could it could mean just continuing the keynote that was set before, that we have too much and we are too much involved in too many things, and that this possibly is not a good thing. But in this case, we see that there is something taking place, and probably has taken place for some time, that many of the preoccupations, many of the activities that we have been involved with have yielded enough to us, and that we are moving in directions where we hope that we will discover new and helpful things. Now, this can be a good thing and this can be a bad thing, because we don't know really what the gentleman, I think he's a gentleman, with his red coat, what he's walking toward. He may be walking toward better things. He may be walking toward more satisfying, more valuable experiences in life. Or he might be walking toward balderdash, toward experiences and ideas that will not be helpful. And the nature of what he is walking toward is not given to us. So I would suggest that both possibilities are there, because the shallow psyche, the little soul, there is being magnanimous and being pusillanimous. So the pusillanimous soul, the little soul, will walk towards things that are worthless, will go to experience which will not avail him or her much, and thereby keeps doing himself in. We all do it to some extent. We come into this world little innocent babes, and then we subsequently try to experience the world, and often our ways of experiencing the world end up not very favorably to us. And we say to myself, oh gee whiz, I wish I hadn't had that experience. If I had known that that's what I'm walking into, I sure wouldn't have continued walking. So now which one will it be? I would say at this particular point, although we may get further pointers, that it could be either, and that it is up to our people to decide which way they are going to go. And so it's the individual's decision, which is really what this country was founded on. This was, even when I was was a little schoolboy in knee pants, which we actually did wear. So I had gained the information from my father and others that the United States was a place where people went to have new experiences, to start a new life. Little did I know that I would be one of them, as it came to pass. But there again, I mean, those who came to the United States, some of them became, in those days, a millionaire was really something, Now, I think that it's the first qualification for a homeless person. That's what a million has become. But let us say, if we go up even to the higher figures, the acquisition of wealth and of the means of procuring the wealth and the means of utilizing the wealth was considered to be a very important characteristic of the United States. Now I leave it up to you whether that judgment still holds and whether these tasks are exercised in a manner that we consider to be good and honorable. But we see a turning from previously explored and utilized resources toward the hills. Now, what's in the hills? Well, we know what's in the hills here. The coyotes, I don't think we necessarily seek intimate encounters with those babies. You know, sometimes you see them walking by here, you can see their shadow. But in any event, we are apparently living at a time when the desire to have new experience, a new way of dealing with reality comes into play. And so this is a turning point. But you know, a turning point can be helpful, or if the turning is in the wrong direction, a turning can be disastrous. So I would say that this is an important thing to remember, that as we turn our back on what has been, we should be discriminating and wise in choosing what shall be. Otherwise, what shall be will be as bad or worse than what has been. So, once again, that inconvenient keynote, that the individual is important, that the individual judgment will matter, that the individual aspiration will be the important thing, I think arises out of this particular card. Now we are moving into the card that is below the cross that we are laying, and in the fourth position, which has usually been associated with some element of the past that is still lingers on, it's still present. So it's the past, and the past that comes from a distant past but still has a considerable importance. And what we have in that position is the major arcanum of the moon. One term that some of my friends gave to this position in the spread is the lingering past. Well, whether it lingers or not, it is a past of some background, of some history, and that, whether we like it or not, is still here. So what can we say about the moon? First of all, it's a major arcana. The major arcana, in my estimation, come rather close to, if indeed are not identical with, what one of the other people whom I admired for so many years so greatly, Carl Gustav Jung, the psychologist, called archetype. The 22 cards of the major arcana are of a deeper and more abiding and more powerful psycho-spiritual force than the others. So, and they're very deep, they go very deep. You can't just fluff them off. You can't just say, oh, well, I don't want to deal with that. A major arcanum will stand there and say, you've got to deal with me. You've got to look at me. You've got to talk to me. You've got to know, if you can, with a bit of gnosis as to who I am. And so that's the kind of card we have here as far as the generic nature is concerned. Magnitude. We have a eerie scene. In the sky is the moon in three of its, maybe even more, certainly three of its phases shining down serenely. And there are two canine or vulpine looking, one of them probably more of a fox-like, the other one definitely a canine creatures who are howling at the moon as indeed they are wont to do. Out of a body of water there is a shellfish looking like a lobster crawling out and crawling onto a road which leads into the distance. Two mysterious illuminated pillars in the back, and there are seeds that could be seeds of light, could be tears, could be blood proceeding from the moon and falling onto the earth. Now, how can we deal with this one? I think that it is that the lingering past, that which is chronologically long past, but which psychologically is still here, calls out to us. And it is the lunar mystery. It is the light. What is the moon? The moon is the light of the night. It is the light that shines in the darkness. Not from the Gospel of John, but it is therefore this is a card of mystery, and it is a card of mysterious forces, mysterious items coming to the fore, coming out of the waters, which is the unconscious, and moving toward this strange source of light which is in the sky. So it's a card of mystery. It is not a card of danger, but it is definitely a very occult card. And now I think we gain maybe a little bit of insight as to the direction that man in the red coat in the previous cast was walking toward. What we are walking toward is a mystery. There are mysterious things coming out of the unconscious. There are mysterious things in the sky. And there are creatures of the earth which howl at the moon, which salute the mysterious thing in the sky. So here's a new keynote. And once again, this could indicate very helpful things. It could indicate dicey and somewhat dangerous things. All of these will be up to us to decide. So I think depending on our attitude, depending on our vision, what is happening here, the light from the night shining moon, the biological life that is turning toward the light of the night, and also the definitely, I mean, you know, a shellfish, a lobster, a crayfish is a weird looking creatures. But some of them taste pretty good too, you know. But they're weird. Look, I mean, if you want something that looks really, really weird, a shellfish does it. So the unexpected, the weird, the peculiar is coming out onto dry land and moving toward an unrecognized objective, but which has some connection with the mysterious light of the moon. So something mysterious, something not at all rational, not at all scientific, not at all PhD, is coming out from the deeps, and it still keeps coming. And this is, let's say, the more hidden component of the process that is taking place. So let's put it this way: if you are interested in occult things, if you are interested in the sort of thing that Theosophists and Rosicrucians and similar weird folk have always been interested in, then take heart, because in the midst of this strange cultural changes, some mysterious things, the occultus means hidden, some things that have been hidden, and some things that carry an other than rational, and certainly other than political significance is coming out into the open. And who knows, maybe this factor will save the day and take us away from so much of the balderdash that we are preoccupied with and that we are being fed by media, and which markedly already at its beginnings is doomed to failure. So maybe there is a hidden factor which psychology would call the unconscious that is coming into play, and it's old. Of course it's a lingering past. It has been there for ages. It has been there for centuries. It has been there for millennia and even longer. But it is coming. It is moving. It is stirring up nature and perhaps our own nature. I would say that to my weird way of looking at reality, this particular card, which is at the bottom of the Celtic cross, is perhaps the most interesting and in many ways the most hopeful of the cards that we have seen so far. Now then, all right, her I like. So now we go to the more recent past, and that is over on this side, and this is always a strong card, because it is something that has happened already, or that has appeared to us in some form, but that is really powerful and its influence endures. So what do we have there? We have the Empress. Now the Empress, of course, is one of the prime feminine cards of the Tarot, equal perhaps only to the High Priestess, and has some relationship to nature, but on the whole is let's say the prominent, the insightful, the wise aspect of feminine nature. So what has happened within the last, half a century or so? The feminine has definitely called attention to itself, and others have called attention to it. So we have in our midst a wise and at the same time very mellow and very kindly, because the Empress is a much more kindly card than, say, the High Priestess. Being of a priestly disposition and profession myself, I obviously like the High Priestess, but the Empress is going to be nicer to you than the High Priestess. So let's say I would say this may have something to do with the feminist era, within various ways in which the feminine principle has come into prominence in comparatively recent times, because it is the recent past. And I think that the greater her influence, and you see on her shield is the sign of Venus. So she has to do with love, she has to do with kindness, she has to do with naturalness, and she bears the crown of the stars of the ancient wisdom on her head. So not only weird things and almost bad things have happened with all the cops and things like that, but something very good has happened in comparatively recent times, and that is the influence of the Empress, and that influence should be cultivated and understood. All right. Now we jump on the other side of the cross, where this is now what you've been waiting for, and this is what, of course, our Hollywood prophet Criswell was talking about, the future. So now we're placing our foot for the first time on the future, and understandably the near future. So we're not talking about something that we'll have a couple of 100 years from now, but that may happen now. And the near future will be, let's see what it will be. Oh, my goodness, another lady, the Queen of Cups. Now, the Empress and the Queen of Cups together, this I like. Because this would, you see, Cups is the original suit out of which the suit of hearts in playing cards developed. So it has to, the Queen of Cups definitely has to do with love, with affection, with kindness, with all sorts of things of this sort. And so this is the near future. So I would say that those who are interested in the romantic side of life, which I think is true of all of us, because this is one of my heresies when I depart from 19th century, from at least the formulations of 19th century occultism, that in order to be an occultist, in order to be a theosophist, an anthroposophist, a Rosicrucian, whatever they may be, you have to be first of all a romantic. A lot of the people in the 19th century got it wrong. They wanted to turn everything into a science. Rudolf Steiner, whom I greatly respect, otherwise he was the one who was spiritual science. Come on, Herr Doctor. The thing is, we are not dealing here with 19th century science. We are dealing here with a mystery. And what you have to do in order to approach the mystery, you have to feel it. You have to feel it. Thinking hasn't got us very far. Thinking has got us to nuclear weapons. Thinking has brought us to terrible revolutions and revolutions and things of that sort, right up to the present time. The overactivity of the thinking function hasn't brought us much good. But the heart, the cup, the feeling, especially when it is turned to worthy objectives, can be of very great help. So I think that this would indicate that in the near future, and something that we should concentrate on is kindliness, love, good-naturedness, and an accepting attitude, especially toward other forms of consciousness, toward other people. If we can do that, I think that as some of the depth psychologists have, I'm thinking particularly of one whose name will come to me, have indicated in the feeling function there is a treasure. And it could be that in the relatively near future, let's say within the next 100 years, this treasure may be discovered, because the Queen of Cups holds a treasure. She holds a grail. She holds a mysterious, mystical chalice, while her feet are on the shore of the ocean. So I would say the next few decades if we take advantage of it, we might get very helpful and very transformative and insight-producing feelings. So I would say next 20 years, next 30 years, I'm afraid that that's a little bit too far ahead for my advanced age, but in any event, just even the next few years, concentrate on the Queen of Cups. Concentrate on love. Concentrate on kindliness. And if you do that, you will greatly reward it. So that is the near future. And now then we are moving up to the top of the Celtic cross, which is really, I think, the seventh position. And what we have there is the more distant future, or the continuing of the future, the continuing development of what we have already seen in its earlier stages. So let's see what we have for that position. Oh, hi. There. Huh? No, I don't want two. I don't want one. Only one. All right. So what we have now is the more distant future. I still call it that. But the more, what's more distant and what's more close is very much up to the individual. When you are 20 years old, then being 21 is the near future. And it will reveal so many great things to you. You are now an adult, even though your mind is still as stupid as it was before. But in any event, that's really not the part of the thing. Is here in the future, which is beyond the next 20, beyond the next 30 years. We have the Three of Pentacles, and I believe that this is the first pentacle actually that has appeared so far. Now, as many of you may recall, the pentacles relate to the element of earth, and they have to do with they have to do with physical things in the sense of how our consciousness can engage with outer reality. And the card that we picked, being the Three of Pentacles, I think is of some importance. But once again, I call attention to my romantic proposition. We had two of the most romantic cards of the tarot, namely the Empress and our dear friend, the Queen of Cups. And out of these, now a pentacle. And this pentacle, this particular card of pentacles, the Three of Pentacles, is a card of construction. I mean, not necessarily of buildings, although that's the symbolism, but it means that we have within us the creative power to build. And that's very helpful to me, and I'm very glad about that, because architecture is one of my great loves. No wonder C.G. Jung's only son, Franz Jung, engineer Franz Jung, was an architectural engineer. He didn't become a psychologist. He was an architectural engineer, because to me, architecture is the way in which beauty, in such a magnificent way, has been brought into human life and into human consciousness, and has endured. Well, anything from this side of the pyramids is architecture. And look how important it still is. Look how people strive for the power and the beauty and and the glory that human consciousness out of the element of earth has made, and whereby it has enhanced the beauty of life on earth and our ability to appreciate that beauty. So it would seem to me that in the more distant future, we may become more constructive in the actual meaning of the term. But I bring back the note that in order to be constructive, in order to be the new Leonardo da Vinci's and Raphael's of this world, we first have to feel. If you read Irving Stone's marvelous book about the Renaissance artists and so forth, you will see that these people were people of very intense feelings who had the ability to translate those feelings into art. And perhaps in the more distant future, that is something that may occur to us. Now we have actually completed the Celtic cross, and some people might think that that's enough. But actually there is an organized structure of 4 cards, which is up like one of the pillars of Solomon, or just one side of the structure that is extremely important, because in it we find, well, in some ways perhaps more the internal development of the human psyche within this period, although everything else has also to do with that. But the 4 there are very important, I would say, psychologically speaking. And so we start from the bottom, where we have a very important position. Now my view of that position in the tarot spread is probably not the same as that of others, but I would say that it is the voice of something very important, the voice of what Carl Gustav calls the self. So that a deity, an influence is rising from the depths and will help to inspire and to transform our lives. And that particular influence in this case is characterized by the most loving of all the tarot cards, namely the 2 of Cups. So it would seem that maybe one thing that we have been all missing and still are, with all of our preoccupation with sex and gender and this and that, we have forgotten love. And it would seem that both the Empress and the High Priestess, and now the card of the Lovers, the 2 of Cups, point to that. So this is the voice from the deep, but it is the voice of a deific voice. And just like earlier we said that we can only deal with some of the influences that we saw if we listen to our feelings, if we cultivate our feelings, and if we turn our feelings toward good things. Now we have the arising from the unconscious of the all-powerful and certainly most welcome phenomenon of love. I know that it's easy to appear as a sentimental goof when you sing the praises of love, but whatever you want to call it, love, affection, sympathia, all of the, if these things are not cultivated mightily, then the opposite forces, the dark forces, the martial forces, the cruel forces, really will overtake us. So I have no doubt in my mind that even by way of these few cards, that there is a great need this year and probably for a number of years to come to, first of all, affinitize ourselves to our feelings, become more feeling-toned individuals. You know, you can only do so much with the physical, we know that. For one thing, I have found out by way of the happenstance of an exceedingly long life. Here you are, the physical. When you're young, you know, you run into the hills, you step on the rattlesnakes, which we can do very easily here. You play with the coyotes, which will bite your hand. But let's say, you know, you can do all kinds of things that are on the active and on the physical side. But then you must look at some of the factors that are deeper. And among these deeper ones is the romance of life and indeed the love of life. So I think that the coming forth of the Two of Cups at this point of the unconscious, on where the voice of the true self from down below calls out, is extremely important. And so there will be an opportunity, I think, in our, well, probably not in my lifetime any longer, but there will be an opportunity for most of us who are here to call forth something very beautiful, very pleasant, very ennobling from the deep of the unconscious. Because as certainly many have pointed out, in the collective unconscious there rests a mystery. And that mystery is what Carl Jung called the self. And it is when the love of this internal deity, of this star that has been placed into us by the highest heavens, when that is cultivated, is beginning to come into its own, that's very good news indeed. Now we are moving upward, and we are coming to the second from the bottom card, and which is of a more practical nature. And it indeed has a practical card associated with it, because here we have the King of Pentacles. We didn't have many pentacles. So what does that mean? I would say it means that when we have learned how to feel life, and then we have learned how to love life as well as love other people, then by way of invoking these forces, we will, and I will probably have to defer to the New Thought metaphysicals, as I like to call them, you know, the metaphysicals, that our physical nature and our ability to deal with the physical world, and perhaps even our physical well-being, will be thereby enhanced. But look how much it's got to go through. So it's not the simple-mindedness of the simple-minded metaphysical who says, oh well, I'll make declarations, invocations, meditations on health, and I'm going to be the healthiest son of a gun in Hollywood. It doesn't work that way. You know, that's not the issue. What it means is that certain qualities of goodness, qualities of kindness, qualities of love have to rise within us, and that will then reflect itself in the physical too. We may, our physical wealth, our material goods may be few, but what we have will be of a kind that we can enjoy. What we have will redound to our benefit and will be important to us and through us perhaps to other people, because that is to a great extent what the King of Pentacles declares. We will obtain a royal power over the physical by way of having experienced and cultivated the feeling, the love, the sentimental side of life. So we will all be sentimental millionaires, billionaires, ladies and gentlemen. And if the billions won't be there, at least the good sentiments will be there. They are worth a great deal as well. So the experience of the physical, which can be connected with our deeper nature, is present there. Now we move upward, and we are coming perhaps almost to the opposite pole of being, namely to consciousness, awareness. And hasn't really all of this been about consciousness? I think it has. Because I think that the Tarot, like everything of a truly important and helpful nature in this world, is here to make us conscious. Make us conscious. If you encounter some experience and you can't squeeze real consciousness out of it, walk away from it. Walk away from it. It may be valuable in other respects, but we are here to become conscious. And once we have become conscious, then we will have heard perhaps the mysterious word that was heard in the temples of Egypt, where according to some perhaps imagination the Tarot originated, and it will say, yes, now you know, and because you know that you are part of the divine. That so there is a possibility here of real gnosis, of real awareness in this particular, but you see how late it comes. So don't lose your determination, don't lose your luck, don't lose your desire to become more, because that's what we are really here for. Everything else leads to that, to become more conscious. And this is what some psychologists, some very famous ones and some very good ones, have called it is the search for meaning. The grail in life is meaning. It is not intellectual meaning that this means that, but it is a meaning that can also be defined as consciousness, a meaning that Gautama has called enlightenment, and that others have called by other names. So there is a possibility when we go through all of these, and in this particular year, to attain to greater consciousness. This can become a year of gnosis, which a word that the deep meaning of some of us is familiar and is being studied by some of us. We can become aware of very important, very helpful, very empowering and transformative elements if we reach to this point. But again, look at the rest of it all. What played a tremendous amount of tremendous role in this reading. We still have one coming. What has played such a great amount, it was feeling, and kindliness and love. Why? Why? Because from these items of experience comes good consciousness. From hunger for power, from envy, and you know what reigns over so much of the world now too is what? It's a teachings of envy. He has something and I want it, and therefore I'm going to take it from him. This has happened over and over and over again, and if somebody resists, then kill him. 40 million people, more than 40 million in China alone, with Mao Zedong. Because when we don't have kindliness, when we don't have love, when we don't have a recognition of our underlying mysterious and yet extremely powerful relationship to each other, then we haven't got anything. We may have money, we may have power, we may have an entrance to the White House or to some other colored house, but it is all for nothing. And that is why the New Testament and Buddhism and various others all emphasize the great need for these feeling tone developments. But anyway, in the awareness of our consciousness is very, very important. And we haven't got it yet, have we? All right. So what do you suppose this particular card is? It is the star. Well, the star is really sort of the star is something that is inside of us. It shines. It takes us to the cradle of Bethlehem, as it did the three magi. The star is both a light bringer and a guide. I think the star in many ways here is the crowning achievement, that as the result of our having become affinitized to the great life, not just life. It's very easy to say, oh, I revere life. But what about the life beyond the life, the great life, the ultimate life, the life that never goes away, the life that ever grows stronger, which is the life of life. And so we have the star which shines over the life, by way of our cultivating our good feelings, cultivating our love, cultivating kindness, cultivating compassion. We eventually arrive to a tremendously important guidance, the guidance that comes from the star. And this is the star that is within us and that has to come forth. In many ways, all the other cards that we looked at are steps in that direction until we come to the point where we find the star. And the star will continue to guide us in this world and in the next. And now we have only one more to go, the future, the final outcome. The final outcome, in some ways, at least in my humble experience, sums up the entire reading. In many ways, it sums up our relationship to fate and to the tarot. So in some ways now, with the final outcome, which is the Ace of Cups, we sum up really the major expressions of the transcendental will, which I hope that we have seen manifest in the various cards. The Ace of Cups, of course, is the ancestor of the Ace of Hearts, and it is the grail, the most powerful container of light and life, and especially of love. This is the supreme source of love and compassion and kindness and mercy. You know, it is, I am not pushing any religious point of view, but by observing, let's say, the religious life in the world, this reminds me of a very important development, which is very, very powerful in many parts of the world, which is the Divine Mercy movement, which has popped up within the last few years in the Roman Catholic Church and has already created a wonderful counterweight to the bumbling materialism into which the Church itself has fallen. And so, you know, namely the I mean, I have to give several lectures on the subject, so I can't go into it, or I will, but let's say that what in the French is called merci is much more than what the English word mercy indicates. But it indicates that there is a tremendous force of benevolence and goodness and forgiveness and the kind of compassion that elevates the object of compassion in this world. And if we are able to come to it, then we have really found the Holy Grail. So the summing up of tonight's reading with the Ace of Cups is that something very marvelous will come, because this is, of course, it's the suit of hearts that developed out of this. That something of a, again, based very greatly in feeling, but going way beyond the ordinary limits of feeling, something very good, something very helpful, something very lovely, something very glorious is trying to come through in this world. And the question is, will we be there aiding it? Will we be there helping it? Or will we stand in its way? If we go along with so much that is being cultivated in the world nowadays, political, technological, everything else, we stand in its way. But somehow I think the Ace of Cups and the Grail, the heart, the Sacred Heart, wants to come forth, wants to take over, wants to become the determining factor again, and the opportunity for many of us will be here this year. Everything in this reading points toward it, and I have seldom been so moved and so happy by any reading that I did or interpreted before, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart for having come and to help to make this possible. God bless you all.